This video is being recorded through the viral apocalypse, so this isn't my normal get up. I just assume that if the world is going to end, that I should look as intimidating as possible. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but let's get into setting up KeePass on your mobile device. In the last video, we went over how to create a KeePass database and how to set that up on your desktop. But one of the advantages of a password manager is that it allows you to keep complex passwords and share it across all your devices. In this video, we're going to go over how to install it onto an Android device. I would do this also for iOS in the same video to show any kind of nuances and differences, but I can't find any images or any way to virtualize that in VirtualBox. So we're just going to go through and set this up in Android, and the process in theory should be very similar with the iOS App Store. So we're going to navigate to the Android App Store, and this part's really quick, otherwise I would cut it out of the video. I assume that you know how to use your mobile device's App Store. And we're going to go ahead and install that. Now that the app is installed, we can go ahead and click Open, and it will navigate us to the EULA. You can read the EULA if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK here at the bottom. And you have the option to create a new database on your mobile device. I very much prefer the desktop experience, which is why I showed you how to set up a KeePass database on desktop via Windows machine in the last video. We're just going to go ahead and access that by clicking Open File. Now we can navigate over to Dropbox, and it's going to bring us to a sign-in page. Now because KeePass isn't installed, I can't copy and paste the username and password the same way that I did on desktop or connect it via Tusk, which is really convenient. So I will sign in with Google since this is an Android device and I am logged into my Google account. Go ahead and click your Google username and click Allow when that option comes up. Now we can connect our local database with KeyFile, and we can sign into our KeePass database. Now that we've got our password typed in, we can go ahead and log in. You'll see the same thing that you did last time. You see that there's a bunch of folders and there's some sample entries down here in the bottom. Everything that was available in the desktop version is available in mobile. It does look a little bit different. KeePass allows autofill. I have this enabled on my mobile device, but this virtual machine doesn't like it for some reason. I'm just going to go ahead and click Do Not Show This again. For autofill to work consistently 100% of the time, I found that you have to use the KeePass keyboard, which I really do not like. The spell check doesn't work right, and the swiping function doesn't work as well as the Gboard, so I'll just go ahead and leave that. If you remember last time, we had the Dropbox account in our general folder. So now that we have the general folder set up, I'm going to go over here and log out just to prove that the username and password work the way that it's supposed to. So we can go into the entry, copy the username, and copy our super long password. And voila, we logged into our Dropbox account, no problem. You can do this with all of your passwords. One of the nice things about the KeePass for Android function is it does allow you to tie the password manager to your fingerprint. Also, it has some settings in here. While we're on the topic of settings, let's dive in a little bit deeper. The settings here on KeePass for Android I have found are pretty solid by default, but there are a couple of optimizations that you can make to make the app a little bit easier to use. For the database, the only function here that I've ever really dived deeply into is unlocking by fingerprint. This function works pretty well. It does require that you enter your master password, and then every login afterwards will be unlocked by your fingerprint. Going back into the app settings, this is really the bread and butter of where you're going to want to customize and what degree of security you really want, which is under the security tab. Under the security tab, there's a clipboard timeout function. This will time out passwords if you've copied and pasted them. That way you don't copy and paste a password into an application and then an hour later go and text a friend, try and copy and paste an image, and then send your friend your password. That would be bad. So you can set this for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I think I have mine set for 1 minute. Really, I find even on a mobile device, I rarely need anything more than 30 seconds. The app timeout. This is a pretty big one as far as security. If you're using a pattern to unlock your Android device, I would recommend setting your app timeout for really short. Those pattern unlocks are very easy to hack just through observation, taking video of people. They can see where your hand is going, and then all they have to do is replicate that on your device a handful of times, and they will be able to unlock it. If you're using a pin, especially a long pin, you can set this for longer. Mine is set a little bit on the longer end, but we can get into options for something if you wanted to set this to never. Lock when the screen is off. That, of course, every time that you turn off your screen, it's going to lock. Lock when leaving the app. Locks when you leave the app. And to save the key file. Saving the key file will save it up to the cloud, and then periodically between your desktop and your mobile version of your password manager, it will request a sync. When you sync, it might duplicate records, but in most instances, it will not overwrite anything. So usually you're not going to lose any information. I found that it's been stellar for me. I've never had any problems with losing access to accounts that I've saved in KeePass. Close button. This actually links back to the application timeout. The close button allows you to kill the app from your lock screen. The reason why I say that it works with app timeout is if you wanted to set it so that your app never timed out, but say you were concerned about someone else having access to your phone, maybe you wanted to hand your phone over to someone to use for a little bit, you could kill the application from your login screen, and even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to get into your KeePass account unless they had your master password. Clear the entered master password. This option right here means that when you type in your password, if you get it wrong, it's going to clear it completely. If you have a really long password, you might not want to go down that path. It is there if you want to make sure to have absolute security on your device. It comes with a little bit of a convenience penalty. The last option in the security section is the built-in keyboard inside of KeePass for Android. This is something that I mentioned earlier in the video. I really prefer the Google Gboard to the KeePass to Android option, and I just copy and paste the passwords and usernames from the application by hitting this little square button in the bottom. This does provide a little bit more convenient auto-loading of usernames and passwords, but I very much prefer the Gboard spell check and just general functionality. It seems a little bit more polished and a little bit more handy for my use case. As I mentioned before, most of the defaults for KeePass have been really solid for me just by default, but we'll jump into Quick Unlock because this is something that I mentioned earlier in the video. What Quick Unlock does is when you're logged into the app, but your master login has expired, you can type in the last handful of characters in your master password to get access to your database. This is something that you would do say you didn't use fingerprint unlock on your application. It is enabled by default, and the default is 3 characters. I do have mine set for longer just for greater security, because if someone does get access to your phone, they can just iterate through a handful of options and possibly unlock your master password. If you do take proper precautions, this probably doesn't need to be much longer than 3 characters, especially if you have a pretty long password to get access to your device and have the app closed most of the time, so that most of the time people would need to know your entire master password. And then finally, hiding the quick unlock length. Say someone does have access to your phone, you probably want this to be hidden. And in most cases, you're going to know what the quick unlock length is, usually 3, 4, 5, or 6 characters. By hiding the quick unlock length, anyone who gets access to your device doesn't know whether they need to type in the last 3, 4, 5, or 6 characters. So this actually would be something that I'd recommend to turn on for a little bit greater security, because you already know the answer to the question the app is asking. This should be everything that you need to get started with KeePass for Android, especially going back to the last video where I showed you how to set up the password database using your desktop version. If you made it this far in the video, please leave a thumbs up and stay healthy in these strange times. Bye.